Hey guys, welcome back to the Calibrate Tools and DIY channel. Hope everybody's doing well. And you know, today I'm going to introduce a tool to you that's the most powerful tool in your tool arsenal. Okay. And hold on a second here. If you want to see it, just go look in the mirror. That's the most powerful tool. I got you on that one, didn't I? All right, guys. So this is more of a mindset talk here. I like to give those every now and then. But I think it's very important, okay? Because we all struggle with, our life's mission, our life's goal. Even if you have that, you may not even have that. You may not know where you're going in life, right? You may just be going through the motions. You got a job, you know what I'm saying? You may not have a job. You may have a lot of money, right? Where you don't have to work. And that's, hey, I'm happy for you, right? But for the majority of the world's population, we're just working just trying to get to that space where we don't have to. And so we're so bogged down with bills and responsibilities and stuff. So we don't really have time to think about why are we really here, right? And I don't want to get off into that so much. Let me reel it back in here. You have to have a vision in life, right? You have to have something that keeps you going other than paying the bills, okay? I know a lot of people, and you probably do too, that worked all their life and they retired, and maybe 6 months to a year down the line, they're not here anymore. And I always wondered why that happened, right? Because they probably lost the will to live, right? Or there was just nothing to live for. There was nothing to, all they had was a job that kept them going, that kept them here. So the whole point of this live is to try to understand, why we're here and why it's so important to have a vision, okay? And, that could be whatever it is for you, right? Part of my vision is this channel, right? Is to reach as many people as I can, introduce the trades to them, introduce tools of all kinds to make people's lives easier when they want to use them. That's part of the vision, yes. But I also have a larger vision, okay? And, I'm going to keep that to myself right now. But if you have a larger vision that you're not really locked in with, right? And that's the key right there. It's just some kind of vague, dream that you have, or maybe you don't at all. Like I said, some of us just are kind of wandering through life, not really knowing where we're going, right? And that's sad to me, right? Because when the wind blows, you're just going to blow with it, right? You're not really anchored to something that's going to, keep you on a certain path. And I truly believe that we're all here for a particular purpose. Okay. So we do struggle though. Okay. We do struggle trying to get to where we need to be. And I think that's going to be the crux of what I'm talking about here. We tend to use, motivation to keep us going, right? We tend to use we're going to use our willpower to kind of push us through to get where we need to go. But sometimes the strain can be so much that we give up, right? Right? Because we're relying on something that's finite, right? Something that's going to run out. Motivation is going to run out. Your willpower, you only have so much of that, okay? And I'm not knocking the value of these things, but I think we're missing an ingredient, in our quest to achieve our goals. And this particular ingredient is we don't even identify with the goal. We don't even identify with success. Our self-image is really, we really don't have one. Okay, we want to achieve these things. We want to, get to a certain point in life, but it's such a hard struggle that, a lot of us just give up. Okay, and that's because we don't identify, right? We don't identify with the type of person that we need to become in order to achieve these goals, right? So think of it like a baseball player. They have these mitts, right? Now the mitt is much bigger than your hand. Okay. Not that you can't catch the ball with your regular hand, but a mitt makes it much easier, right? So that hand had to become, you had to put a mitt on that hand in order to be able to catch that ball. Well, it's the same thing. You have to identify as something bigger than what you see yourself as in order to, receive, the fruits of success that you want. All right. And if you don't become that person, and this is where the hard work or the, if you want to call it hard work or not, this is where the work, the sacrifice comes in, because you may want something, but if you don't become the person to be able to receive that thing, it's always going to be a dream. Okay. So I'm going to go through a few steps of what I call identity shifting from where you are to where you need to be as far as your self-image, who you see yourself as, in order to be able to receive what you want, right? All right, so let's go through it. And guys, this applies to any area of your life, okay? So the number one thing is you got to be specific, okay? You got to be specific about who you want to become. You can't just say, okay, I want to be successful, right? You have to be more specific than that. That's too vague. All right, so think about it. If I want to go from here to, say, downtown, okay, and I know exactly where I want to go downtown, do I tell my GPS, or do I type in my GPS or my MapQuest or whatever? Do I type in downtown for the destination? No. If I do that, it's not going to take me anywhere, right? I have to type in the exact address in order for the GPS to take me there, right? So it's the same thing in your life. If you are vague about where you want to go, if you are vague about your goals, right? You can't just say, okay, I got big goals. Okay, I want to be this. I want to be a wealthy person. Wealthy is too vague. You got to give it a number, right? You got to give it a timeline. Okay. It's like I said, it's like a GPS system, right? That's basically how it all works. Any successful person will tell you that they were not vague about where they wanted to be. Now, they may not have known all the details. It's just like with a GPS. You don't know all the streets it's going to take you down. It may change the route on the way there, right? Well, it's the same thing. All you have to know is the address. Don't worry about how you're going to get there. You're going to take the steps necessary, and you're going to be guided to get there by ways that you may not even understand. But the important thing is that you had a specific address, a specific goal that you wanted to reach, right? That's how it works. Okay. You have to be specific about who you want to be, right? You have to see yourself as that person. Okay. Already. All right. Do not look at your external reality. Okay. That can change at any minute, but you want to be in control of that change. Right. But you have to give your reality a direction. Okay. That means you have to, once again, be specific about where you want to be, where you want to go, and give yourself a timeline. 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Okay. And then you have to be disciplined about it. Right. Now, the first time that you do this, I'll tell you what's going to happen. Your mind, okay, which is all about survival and all about keeping the status quo, because it wants to feel safe. Your mind is going to start to attack your higher vision. It's going to say, well, I can't do, you can't do that. You know what I'm saying? You never did that before. Don't even try, right? Look what happened last time. That's what it's going to start doing to you. Okay. That's why you are your own worst enemy when it comes to reaching higher goals. Just imagine climbing a mountain versus a molehill or a small hill. It's easy to climb that smaller hill, but let's just say you're trying to climb a mountain, right? That's going to be much harder, right? Because you're going higher than you ever would with a molehill. So you're going to have more challenges along the way. The altitude is going to affect your respiratory system, right? You may slip and fall. You may encounter wildlife that are not as friendly. All kinds of things can happen to you on the way up that mountain, right? Because it's a harder climb than just a molehill. Okay, so when your mind realizes that the real you, which is not your mind, by the way, the real you is starting to graduate from the prison of the habitual mind, which tells you, I'll just stay the same, just go to work, do your 9 to 5, go home, eat some food, watch some TV. You know what I'm saying? Don't even bother going to the gym. You'll wait for that next week or something. You'll start that next week, that kind of thing. You just procrastinate on everything. That's your mind trying to keep you in a lower state. Okay. I forget the law. It's the first or second law of thermodynamics, where everything, I think, tends towards entropy. I think that's the paraphrased version of it. Basically, it's saying that everything tends towards chaos, right? And that happens in the mental world as well, right? So it takes some mental discipline to keep your thoughts together and, not let them devolve into negative thinking, because the default is negative thinking, right? Or just indifference, right? So we not only have to battle the external world, we have to battle our inner world as well. When we set our GPS to achieve higher goals or a higher address or a higher destination. Okay. All right. So we have to audit our self-talk, because that's with us all the time. From the time we wake up in the morning, from the time we go to bed at night. Now, I put out a video every week on this channel about, tools and DIY and, subjects surrounding this. And let me tell you, it's not always easy, right? I got to come up with subject matter, just like I got to come up with the subject matter for these lives. And, part of me is like, oh, just, do another one, do it next week. You're not going to do it today. And, we all understand where I'm coming from, right? We all deal with, negative thoughts telling you, hey, don't worry about it, things like that. Once we start listening to those thoughts too much, right, that will spell the beginning of the end. So we have to constantly be vigilant about what's going on up here, because what's out there is already trying to take us out, right? Because we're dealing with people who have not mastered their self-talk, which is I'd say 80 to 90% of the population. So we're going to have to deal with their negativity and ours as well. So it's a constant war going on here, right? All right. So watch your thinking. Okay. That's, if this is the second step, I would say, to after identifying and being specific, which was the first step, about where you want to be, who you want to become. And I shouldn't say want to be, but who you are. Because in the first step, you must get rid of anything that's conditional, like want, I want to be, things like that. Just, you must stay in the I am mode. And I know this sounds kind of, familiar, probably heard this type of terminology before. but you really have to be in the now about who you want to be, right? There, see, I said want to be again, about who you are. Even if it is not materialized yet, you have to get rid of certain words in your vocabulary. And it can be that granular, that nitpicky, right? But it's a process, okay? And then after that, after you are specific and you give your GPS the proper coordinates, right? About your identity shift, then you have to audit your self-talk, okay? You have to audit your self-talk. And one of the ways to do that, and this is the next step, is to write, get a piece of paper out, pen and a pad, and express that identity in words on a piece of paper. I've done this in the past with goals that I had in my head. I'm talking about when I was in my teens. I had specific goals that I wanted to accomplish. And what I would do is I would take a sheet of paper and I would write down, I am this, over and over again. Almost like if a teacher punishes you and tells you to just keep writing a particular phrase over and over again. Well, that's what I did. And I'm telling you right now, it worked. There's a scientific, or I think I can't quite explain it, but there is validity to writing things down, and how writing things down can actually bring things into your reality a lot quicker. Okay, it has something to do with the mind-hand connection and all this stuff. I'll have to come back to you with the specifics on that. But you don't want to use phrases like I want to this, I want to that, right? You got to write it as if it's already happened, okay? Just keep repeating that. And repetition, I think, is the key there as well. You do it enough, it will eventually pierce the veil between your conscious and subconscious minds, right? And writing helps that. Repetition helps that. So you must first, once again, identify, be specific about who you want to become, right? And then just just take time out and write it. Say, I am this, I am this, and I'm this. Okay. All right. Next step, aside from those written affirmations, is you want to do something, okay? Take small steps toward that goal, okay? Right? These small steps will basically tell you that you are that already, because you're taking action now, right? You're not just, you went beyond writing, right? Now into actually taking those steps, right? So say, okay, let's just say you wanted to start a business. Okay, well, now get on computer and form that LLC. Make those calls to people that are already in the business, right? To get advice from them on what should be your next steps, okay? And reward yourself along the way, okay? So there's ample evidence to prove that small rewards along the way, right, that you give to yourself because you've made certain moves, or you've made an effort. These rewards are very important in solidifying that identity that you already established first of who you are. Okay, so basically what you're doing is you're stacking small pieces of evidence, okay, through these small actions that you take over and over again every day. That's why you have to do something every day towards your goal, no matter how small it is, okay? Because every action that you take, right, is like that identity giving you the applause to say, yes, I am, you're doing good. Keep going. Okay, keep going. All right. Now here's the next step that a lot of us struggle with, especially our social, if you're a social butterfly, right? And you like people and all this stuff, right? You got to be around people. This is going to require you to change your environment to match your identity. Okay. So you can't say you're a successful person, or that's too vague. You can't say, hey, look, you make this amount of money, whatever money you want to throw out there. Or let's just say, okay, you're an artist with your art hanging up in some museum somewhere. You can't necessarily hang around people who don't aspire to bigger things and expect to move ahead. In other words, your environment is very crucial to what I'm talking about here. Okay. Putting yourself in the proper environment to cultivate your identity. It's almost like planting a seed. Do you want to plant a seed in soil that's dried up, dehydrated, unhealthy soil, and expect that seed to blossom in that type of environment to produce a healthy plant? Doesn't make sense, right? You first have to cultivate, till the soil, right? Make sure that it's fertile to be able to plant a seed in there in order for that seed to grow in a healthy environment, so it can produce a tree or a plant or whatever that produces good fruit. How do you expect to be successful at your, whatever goal that you have, or become the person that you want to be, identity, if you're in an environment that's the polar opposite of what your identity is? That's why you have to match your environment to your identity. And that's one of the hardest things for people to do. Okay? Because they have, they're so attached to people, right? Old friends, old this, old that, what I'm saying? Family, even family. And nobody's saying that you have to totally cut people off. But if they're not serving the ultimate goal and they're taking up a lot of your, like I'd say 80% of your social life, then that's a problem. Now that tells everybody else that's looking at you that they heard you say, oh, I'm going to be this, I'm going to be that, or I am this, I am that. And then they look at you and see who you're hanging around. Then they're going to say, oh, that's a fool. That's a hypocrite. They're just all talk. Because if they were really about who they say they were, they would not be in this environment. And the same friends, they're going to say the same friends that you want to hang around, they're going to say the same thing. They're going to want you around because they're not going anywhere either. So they're happy that you're just all talk. But in the back of their mind, they're saying, they're not serious. So, and another negative side effect to that is that people won't be able to trust you now, because you've shown them that you all talk, right? You're not about that life. Okay. So this, once again, this is this is one of the most challenging aspects of identity, of an identity shift. Okay. And one of the reasons that willpower is not as powerful as an identity shift is because your willpower can get weak. It's like going to the gym, right? Like you come in the gym ready, and then you jump on there and you're pumping 300 pounds, and then after a while you could only pump maybe 150, right? Because you're on the you're maxing out. Well, that's how willpower is, right? But you cannot max out your identity, right? Because the identity is not about work. It's just about being. You know what I'm saying? So you have to live in you have to live in that space. Now, willpower we do need that, right? We do need motivation and willpower at certain aspects, but they're not the core, right? They're not the core. They're like I would say they're like the framing on the house, but the identity is the slab, the foundation. Okay. So when your willpower gets weaker and your motivation starts to go away, then you shift into your identity and realize who you are. And then all of a sudden that energy just comes flowing back. So the identity, who you are, is the gift that just keeps on giving. You understand what I'm saying? Okay. You don't have to push the identity to get up in the morning, right? You don't have to push the identity to get that extra rep in. Just because of who you are, you do it anyway. And that's, that's where you want to live. Okay. And this is how you reach the higher levels of your life. You know what I mean? So yes, environment is very important. You got to change who you're around. Okay. If they're not serving you, if they're not serving the higher goal, right? Because if you're not loyal to your higher goal, don't expect it to be loyal to you. It's not going to give you, it's not going to manifest the identity that you think that you have set forth, right? In this realm. Okay. So you have to be loyal to it. You got to be loyal to yourself first before anybody else. Okay. And that, once again, that self is that identity you've established. Now, all of this stuff I'm talking about is your choice. Nobody's making you do any of this stuff I'm talking about. You don't have to do anything I'm saying right now. But if you want to reach a higher level, or if you want to get away from a certain, circumstance or situation that you're in, it's going to take your identity first and foremost. Okay. It's going to take your identity shift to get out of that situation and to stay out. Because if you don't change your identity, right, it doesn't matter how far you go away from that thing that you're involved, that you're in that situation, because you can't run from yourself. You get it? So you're going to have to change your identity to totally get away from it. So it doesn't matter how far you run. Say a man gets life in prison. He's not getting out of there, right? Unless by some miracle or some circumstance that he happens to get out. But for the most part, let's just say he's stuck in there. If he changes his identity, and looks at his situation as, say, freedom, right? He's free now. He's free from a lot of things that people deal with outside of prison. It's all about perspective, right? So everything starts with identity first. All right. Now, once again, you have to expect your mind, right, to attack you along this process. This is not a walk in the park right here. This is going to take work, right? It's going to take sacrifice. It's going to take meeting parts of yourself that you've hidden, that you've buried possibly for years, and facing them, right? Facing them and absorbing them, I should say, okay? Understanding them, right? It's not about necessarily destroying parts of your nature, but it's about looking at the good, the bad, and the ugly of yourself, right? And facing it, understanding it. And then there's, I don't know if you guys are familiar with alchemy, but that's a process of turning base metal into gold, right? Philosopher's Stone and all that stuff. Basically metabolizing all parts of yourself. Okay. Sorry about the noise. Sorry about the noise there, guys. So once you're able to face all parts of your nature without judgment, okay? Face all parts of your nature without judgment. All the hidden dark areas of yourself that only you and God know about. And see all of that as part of your journey, right? To get to the next level. That's when they will stop haunting you, right? Or they will not have such an effect on you, because now you see the big picture and what part they played. They had a role to play, but they were not you. They had a role to play, and that's it. So all the shame, the guilt, whatever, tends to drop away at that point, because now you see them for what they really are. They don't. This is the thing. When you don't look at them, you turn away from them and try to ignore them. That's when they cast the shadow of shame, guilt, anger, unforgiveness, and all the misery that occurs when you don't face yourself in all your aspects. So this is one of the most freeing things about this process. Okay. All right. Now, when you let go of your old identity, it's almost like a death. When you let go of your old self-concept, self-image that you hung on to for all your life, it's almost like a death. It's almost like, and you may even try to hold on to it as much as you can, but you have to let it go in order to reach the next level. All right. All right. Sorry about the noise, guys. We got people out here yapping, but I'm going to finish it off with this. When something, a lot of times when, like say people in your life pass away, you're going to have to grieve them, right? There may be a period of grief there. And you may even feel that when you're letting go of your old identity, right? When you're shedding that skin, right? There may be a period of grief there, because there's memories, there's there's attachments and things like that. Especially when you have to let go of people that you've cared about in your life, or you have to kind of put them on the back burner. But you have to love yourself more than that, okay? Because those are the things that are going to keep you in the same state that you're in, right? Whether it's people, whether it's environments. So you have to be strong enough to let those things go, right? Let that old self-image go, right? Because all that stuff was an identity as well. It wasn't the real you. It was just an identity that you held on all your life. And that identity was shaped by your environment. It was shaped in your childhood, by your parents, by your, whoever, right? Whether it's, traumatizing situation that happened to you that helped to form that identity that you hung on to. But now it's time to let go of that, right? And reveal your real self, okay? Which is all about expansion and service. Now that's a whole nother level there when we talk about service, right? Because the ultimate goal is for us to serve while we're here on this planet, okay? And you can take that how you want to take that. But we can't serve in our highest capacity if we're stuck, we're unevolved, right? We haven't shed the skin of the old self. Now the old self had a purpose now. Just like I believe the soil has a purpose in germinating that seed that's dropped into it. So we're dropped into a world full of problems, trauma, and all that stuff. But that all that stuff serves a purpose, though. Okay, that serves a purpose to germinate a seed that will produce a more powerful being. Okay, so these are just the basic steps of identity shift that you could consciously take. Okay, so if you want to be anything, you want to be a professional DIYer, a professional tradesman, you can do all that stuff. Okay, but first start with your identity. You first must identify that you are that already. Now it's just time to peel back the layers that are in between that and you. And those layers are that old self, those old habits, you know, that old way of thinking, you know, that environment that you've been hanging around in, all that stuff. Okay. Those people, even your family members that kind of, you know, those negative family members that tell you, oh, you can't do that. All right. I got somebody that tells me, oh, well, you can't be delusional. You know, well, I think you have to be delusional at some point. Anybody who accomplished great things in this world were somewhat delusional, right? They, you know, the religious figures that a lot of people worship in this world, they called them delusional in their day and even killed them for it, right? Remember? Yeah. So there's a place for delusion, and you have to have a grand vision, and then you just, you know, you don't want to be too far off on the with your head in the clouds. You got to have your feet on the ground as well, and then you take achievable steps. You have achievable goals that will take you to that highest level. Okay, so that's basically what it comes down to, guys. I know this, you know, you were like reading the title and it said the most powerful tool, and you were probably expecting me to talk about the latest hammer drill or the latest angle grinder or the latest, I don't know, miter saw. But no, the most powerful tool that you have is you. Okay, no matter what tool you have in your hand, if you're not confident and you're full of fear, it doesn't matter how powerful that power tool is, right? If you don't have the confidence to handle it. Okay. So anyway, guys, I hope you got something from this. Every now and then I come on here and I throw some mindset stuff at you, because I think that's just as important as handling any kind of tool I talk about on this channel. So you guys have a good one. Maybe leave some comments. Tell me what you think. Peace.